I was 6 months pregnant, glowing with anticipation after my latest checkup, waiting for Caleb Jameson to take me home. But as I lingered outside the doctor's office, I overheard a conversation that shattered my world. "Mr. Jameson, the baby is developing perfectly. But, isn't this too cruel to your wife?" the doctor said, his voice heavy with concern. Caleb's response was cold. Detached. "It's just a test tube baby. Using Zoe's egg doesn't change anything." The doctor sighed. "Your wife has carried this child for 6 months. If she finds out it's not hers, she'll be devastated. She loves you so much. And yet you're doing this for, well, since you've made up your mind, I guess we'll have to see it through." "Enough," Caleb snapped. "Claire can never know. Zoe's heart is failing, and she can't risk pregnancy. This child is what I owe her. If it weren't for her saving my life back then, I wouldn't even be here. As for Claire, I'll make it up to her for the rest of our lives." My hands trembled as I clutched the ultrasound report. The baby was healthy, but my heart felt like it had been plunged into ice. All this time, Caleb had insisted on IVF, not for us, but to replace my egg with Zoe's. I had endured 6 months of morning sickness and sleepless nights, carrying a child that wasn't even mine. I walked back to the reception desk, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I'd like to schedule an abortion, please." As I filled out the forms, my mind raced. "Caleb, do you really think it was Zoe who saved you that day?" Later, I overheard more. "Mr. Jameson, the baby has a rare blood type. Once the child is born, your wife will figure it out eventually." Caleb's voice was chilling. "Then we'll take the baby away and tell Claire it was stillborn. Zoe's running out of time. Without a heart transplant, she'll die. She saved Claire's life once. This is just payback." I stood frozen outside the door, my body trembling. On the other side, I was dreaming of holding my baby, while Caleb was plotting to take its life. The child I'd carried for 6 months wasn't even mine. It was Caleb and Zoe's. My legs felt like lead. I wanted to burst in and demand answers, but I couldn't move. "Oh, doctor, I need a refill of that medication," Caleb said casually. The doctor hesitated. "This is a special formula. It strengthens the baby's heart but weakens the mother. Remember, it can't be taken for more than 7 months. This is the final dose." Caleb took the bottle, a sly smile on his face. "Don't worry. I'll make sure she takes it." My stomach churned. Every day for 6 months, Caleb had handed me a glass of water and watched me swallow what I thought was prenatal vitamins. "Take your folic acid," he'd say. "It's good for the baby's heart." But it wasn't folic acid. It was poison. No wonder I'd been losing hair, feeling weaker, struggling to sleep. I thought it was just pregnancy. I was wrong. Before Caleb could open the door, I forced myself to stay calm, masking the storm inside. "Claire," he said, smiling as he walked out. "The doctor said the baby's heartbeat is strong. Just a few more months, and we'll have our little one." His words made my skin crawl. We'd been together for 5 years, survived so much. I thought our love was unshakable, but it was all a lie. Zoe needed a heart transplant, and her rare blood type made it nearly impossible to find a donor. So Caleb had used me as a surrogate, swapping my egg for Zoe's. Once the baby was born, they'd take its heart, and my child would die. I didn't know whether to cry for myself or the innocent life growing inside me. That evening, after dinner, Caleb brought me a glass of water. As usual, "Claire, time for your folic acid." I watched as Caleb shook a pill from the bottle and held it out to me. "I don't want to take it," I said, my voice trembling, his brow furrowed, his tone firm but soft. "Claire, it's for the baby's health. Just take it, okay? Trust me." He spoke so gently, as if he cared, but he was feeding me poison. I fought back the tears, took the glass of water, and asked slowly, "Caleb, do you really want me to take this? You've been taking it for months. It's good for the baby. It'll make things easier for you in the long run," he said. His voice steadied at my last shred of hope vanished. Caleb knew exactly what this medication was doing to me, yet he didn't stop me. He just wiped a drop of water from the corner of my mouth. Satisfied. A wave of nausea hit me, and I gagged. Fighting the urge to vomit, Caleb quickly covered my mouth with his hand. Claire, hold it in. If you throw up, the pill won't work, he said, his grip tightening on my arm to keep me still that I choked back the bile, forcing myself to swallow. Just one more month, and we'll stop, he whispered, his voice soothing. Do it for the baby. Tears streamed down my face. In Caleb's mind, my health, even the baby's life, meant nothing compared to Zoe. This 5-year marriage was over. After I finally fell asleep, Caleb slipped out to the balcony to make a call. Zoe. The baby's heart is developing perfectly. Don't worry, he said, his voice low that I could hear Zoe's faint reply. Caleb, it's all my fault. If I weren't sick, you wouldn't have had to marry Claire and go through all this. You saved my life. I can't have children because of what happened to me, but this is just one child. I'd do anything for you, Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. Tomorrow's the anniversary of your parents' death. You have to come. My parents only see you as their son-in-law. Zoe said that, and my heart turned to ice as I listened. That fire years ago had killed Caleb's parents. I had risked my life to pull him from the flames, only to collapse from exhaustion. When I woke up, Zoe was holding Caleb, crying. He believed she had saved him that I tried to speak, but Zoe shoved an oxygen mask over my face. Caleb, I only found you because Claire was crying so loudly, but she inhaled too much smoke. She might hallucinate, Zoe said, her voice trembling. Caleb looked at me, his eyes dull. Claire's strong. She'll be fine. Zoe, we owe you our lives. He said that I wanted to scream that it was me who had saved him, but the mask muffled my words. Zoe had stolen my moment, and Caleb believed her. The injustice burned in my chest that I wiped my tears, accidentally knocking over a crystal candle holder on the nightstand. It shattered loudly in the quiet night. Caleb rushed back inside, his face panicked. Claire, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Yeah, I mumbled. Who were you talking to? He hesitated, his eyes darting. Just work stuff. Nothing important. It's still early. Let's go back to sleep. He climbed into bed, pulling me close as he always did, but this time, I couldn't stand his touch. I shifted away. What's wrong? He asked, his voice soft. The baby's kicking. It's easier if I lie on my own, I said, my voice flat that he chuckled, resting his hand on my belly. Little troublemaker, making Mom so uncomfortable. I'll spank you when you're out, he teased, then he added, oh, tomorrow's the anniversary of my parents' death. You're pregnant, so it's best if you stay home. My throat tightened. Every year, he had some excuse to keep me from attending. Claire, you've got a bad cold. Stay home. I'll go alone. They've hired a band this year. It'll be too loud for you. Just wait for me here. The smoke from the incense is too much for you. Stay home. Okay. I used to think he was being considerate. But every year, the photos posted online featured Zoe. There she was, standing beside Caleb, bowing solemnly at his parents' graves. They stood hand in hand, like a devoted couple. In his heart, it was clear, they were the family. I was never meant to be part of it. That I swallowed my hurt and nodded when Caleb told me to stay home. After he fell asleep, I texted Ava, my friend who worked at the hospital. Help me schedule an abortion. I don't want this child anymore. The next morning, Caleb left early. No surprise, he was probably picking up Zoe. I opened Zoe's social media, and the first post was from just moments ago. Mom and Dad, it's been a year. I miss you. The photo was taken from the passenger seat of Caleb's car, his arm visible as he drove. Even though I thought I'd accepted the truth, the pain still hit me hard. I closed the app, but then a message from Caleb popped up. Claire, I forgot something. Can you bring it to me? It's a good chance for you to see my parents too. On the nightstand was a velvet box, neatly wrapped. Surprised by his sudden change of heart, I grabbed it and headed to the cemetery, not wanting to cause any trouble. When I arrived, Caleb was holding Zoe's hand, bowing respectfully at the grave. Claire, long time no see, Zoe said as they straightened up. Caleb turned, his face darkening when he saw me. What are you doing here? I told you to stay home. Caleb, it's my fault, Zoe interjected, her voice soft and apologetic. I noticed you forgot the bracelet, so I asked Claire to bring it. I'm sorry. Seeing Zoe's pout, Caleb's expression softened. Of course I didn't forget. I was planning to give it to you on your birthday. But since it's here, let's put it on now. The bracelet was a family heirloom, passed down only to the daughters-in-law of the Jameson family, by giving it to Zoe. Caleb's message was clear. As Zoe took the box from me, she leaned in and whispered, Claire, you're such a failure. 5 years. And Caleb still hasn't accepted you. The bracelet is mine. And the child you're carrying will call me Mom. You know he doesn't love you, but you're too weak to do anything about it. Pathetic. I didn't care about the bracelet, but her mention of the child struck a nerve. I'd endured 6 months of morning sickness, stretch marks, hair loss, and sleepless nights, only to carry Caleb and Zoe's child. My emotions were a whirlwind, but before I could respond, Zoe suddenly screamed and dropped the box. The bracelet shattered on the ground. Claire, what's wrong with you? Caleb shouted, his face red with anger. Claire, I know you're upset that Caleb gave me the bracelet, but this was his parents' wish. How could you destroy it? Zoe cried, her voice trembling. I just wanted to pay my respects. If Claire doesn't want me here, I'll leave. She turned to go, but Caleb grabbed her arm. Zoe, this isn't your fault. If anyone should leave, it's her. He turned to me, his voice cold. Zoe has always remembered my parents' kindness, but you, as their daughter-in-law, have never even visited their grave. Claire, no matter how upset you are, you can't act like this in front of my parents. I stood frozen, too stunned to speak. All these years, he was the one who kept me from visiting. Now, he was blaming me for not paying my respects. If I wasn't welcome, I wouldn't stay. Fine, I'll go. Caleb's eyes flickered with something, guilt, but he didn't stop me. Instead, he turned to Zoe, comforting her as she sobbed. When I got home, Caleb called to explain. Claire, I only said those things because I didn't want Zoe to feel bad. She's an orphan, and she's always been sensitive. My parents saw her as a daughter. The bracelet was just a token of their love for her. It doesn't mean anything. Don't overthink it. If you want, I'll buy you another one. No, thanks. Caleb, you were so worried about her feelings that you trampled on mine. What a perfect little family you've made. But I'm done. I'm not staying in this mess any longer. Claire, don't be mad at me. Tomorrow is our 5th anniversary. Let's celebrate at home. I've prepared a gift you'll love, Caleb said, his voice soft and coaxing, just like it used to be. But now, his affectionate tone only felt hollow and insincere. That I wanted to refuse. But I thought it was important to end things properly. If I was going to leave, our anniversary would be the final chapter. Caleb had gone all out, hiring a Michelin chef for a candlelit dinner and decorating the house with balloons and ribbons. That I came downstairs in my evening gown, only to find that alongside our wedding photos, there were glamorous portraits of Zoe on the walls. I turned to Caleb, confused. Why are her photos here? It's our anniversary. As soon as I spoke, Zoe appeared at the door, dressed in a designer gown. Caleb, Claire, I'm not late, am I? She strutted in on her stilettos, linking her arm with Caleb's. Seeing my expression darken, Caleb quickly pulled away from her, flustered. Claire, don't misunderstand. Today happens to be Zoe's birthday. She has no family, so I thought we could celebrate together. More people, more fun, right? I felt sick to my stomach but forced myself to stay composed. By the way, Claire, I brought a gift for the baby, Zoe said, pulling a delicate jade baby bracelet from her bag. I hope Claire's baby lives a long, healthy life. When she said long, healthy life, her eyes gleamed with unmistakable mockery. Zoe was willing to sacrifice her own child for a heart transplant. My anger boiled over, and I slapped the bracelet out of her hand. It hit the floor and broke in two. Claire, what's wrong with you? Caleb shouted. Zoe was being kind. If you didn't like the gift, you didn't have to destroy it. Tears welled up in Zoe's eyes. It's okay, Caleb. I know Claire's still upset about the bracelet. It's my fault for intruding on your anniversary. I'll just celebrate my birthday alone. Don't blame Claire. She bent down to pick up the broken pieces but cut her finger on the sharp edges. Blood dripped from her fingertip. Caleb immediately took her hand, his face full of concern. Zoe, this isn't your fault. She's being unreasonable. He turned to me, furious. Claire, I've spoiled you too much. Zoe saved your life. Apologize to her right now. My heart was breaking, but I stood my ground. Meeting his gaze. Saved my life. Do you still think it was Zoe who saved you? Caleb looked shocked. Zoe's face paled, but she quickly burst into tears. Claire, you were almost unconscious that day. If you misremembered, that's fine, but you can't accuse me like this. If you hate me so much, I'll just leave. She ran out of the Jameson house, and Caleb shot me one last angry look before chasing after her. I was left alone in the living room, staring at the cold candlelit dinner and the photos of the three of us. Caleb didn't come home that night. In the early hours of the morning, Zoe posted a video. This was the happiest birthday I've ever had. The video showed Caleb holding a homemade cream cake. Zoe leaned against him, blowing out the candles with a bright smile. After making a wish, they shared a deep, passionate kiss that I sent the video to my best friend, Ava Grant. Isn't this ridiculous? I said, my voice bitter. Ava was furious. That scumbag and that bitch. They've gone too far. But wait. Why can't I see the video? I realized Zoe had set it to be visible only to me. I laughed bitterly and closed the app. It didn't matter anymore. I was done with them. Caleb texted me. Claire, I'm staying at the office tonight to work late. I won't be home. I have a meeting tomorrow morning, but I'll go to your prenatal checkup with you in the afternoon. Wait for me. It hit me then. Tomorrow was supposed to be the day of my checkup, but instead, I would be ending this pregnancy. Don't bother. I'll go alone. No, you can't. I know I was too harsh with you tonight. But Zoe did save your life. What you did was really out of line. But don't worry. I already apologized to her for you. She's easygoing. She won't hold a grudge. Be a good girl and get some rest. I'll pick you up tomorrow. I scoffed. His so-called working late was just him spending the night with Zoe for her birthday. I didn't respond and turned off my phone. The next morning, Ava accompanied me to the hospital. The doctor looked at the ultrasound image and sighed. The baby's limbs are fully formed. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I nodded firmly. The doctor hesitated. Have you discussed this with your husband? He's been so attentive during every checkup. He really loves this child. Besides, at this stage, terminating the pregnancy could be hard on your body. My chest ached with bitterness. During previous checkups, Caleb had always been there, making appointments, helping me get dressed, and carefully noting the doctor's advice. I used to think he was as excited about this baby as I was. But now I knew the truth. He only saw this child as a means to save Zoe. As for my health, he didn't care. The baby's father agrees. Please proceed with the surgery, I said, seeing my resolve. The doctor reluctantly agreed. As the cold instruments moved inside me, my heart shattered along with the life I was letting go. After the procedure, I lay pale and weak on the hospital bed. Caleb texted me. Claire, why did you go to the checkup alone? I told you to wait for me. How's the baby? Send me a picture. I smirked coldly, pointing my phone at the bloody mass in the tray. I took a photo and sent it to him. Caleb, does it look good? The moment the photo was sent, Caleb called. Claire, stop joking. Show me our baby. I replied weakly. Caleb, this is your child. There was a pause on the other end, and then his voice broke. You terminated the pregnancy. Why? You were so excited about this baby. But this baby wasn't mine. Caleb, how long were you planning to keep lying to me? You paid off the doctor to replace my egg with Zoe's, letting me carry your child for over 6 months without knowing. Caleb, how could you? Did you really love this child? Or were you just using it to find a compatible heart for Zoe? As a father, how could you sacrifice your own child? You're heartless. Caleb, I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers. We're done. I hung up, said goodbye to Ava, and took a taxi to the airport. When I left the Jameson house, I only packed a few clothes and essential documents. Everything else, I left behind. The clothes, the jewelry, most of it was from Caleb. I never wanted to see any of it again. Caleb tried calling again, but the line was dead. The wedding photo on the wall had been taken down, and all the pictures of us together had been cut in half, leaving only Caleb. He couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't lying, so he rushed to the hospital. By the time he arrived, I was already at the airport, ready to board my flight. Caleb burst into the hospital, overhearing the doctor who had performed the abortion talking to a nurse. Such a healthy fetus. What a shame. The mother had pulmonary hypertension from a fire. There were risks with the pregnancy, but she insisted on carrying the baby for her husband. Now, suddenly, she didn't want it anymore. What a tragedy. Was it that patient, Claire? I heard she almost died saving her husband in that fire. That's how she ended up with her condition. Such a loving couple, why would she suddenly choose to terminate the pregnancy? Caleb froze, then stormed into the examination room. What did you just say? Claire saved me. The doctor looked up, startled. Who are you to barge in here? Wait, aren't you Ms. Gallagher's husband? The one who always came with her for checkups. You didn't know she saved you. It was me who gave you oxygen that day. You wouldn't have survived if Claire hadn't pulled you out of that fire. She was more injured than you were. A few minutes later, and you'd have been gone. Your wife risked her life for you, and now you've let her go through this at 6 months pregnant. Do you have no conscience? Honestly, you seemed so caring during all those checkups. But now, I guess you never really know someone. Caleb stood there, stunned. His memory clashed with the doctor's words. It wasn't Zoe who saved him. It was Claire. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion. He needed to find out the truth. The fire at the Jameson house had destroyed the security cameras, so there was no way to verify what happened. He rushed home to confront Zoe. Who really saved me during the fire at the Jameson house? He demanded. Zoe's eyes flickered with guilt, but she kept her composure. Why bring this up after so long? I made you some chicken soup. Come, try it. She handed him a bowl, but he slapped it out of her hands. It shattered on the floor. His eyes burned with anger. Zoe, tell me the truth. Was it Claire who saved me from the fire? Was it her? Zoe, trembling and panicked, finally broke down. It was Claire who pulled you out. But if I hadn't given you CPR, you would have suffocated. So, in a way, I saved you too. Zoe, stop lying. It was the doctor who gave me oxygen, not you. Realizing her lies were exposed, Zoe collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Caleb finally understood how deeply he'd been deceived. For the sake of a liar, he had hurt the person who loved him most, and who he had loved most. For 5 years, Claire had endured so much pain to try to conceive, while he had secretly been giving her birth control pills. When she finally became pregnant, she had been so excited to welcome their child. But he had already planned to use that child as a spare organ bank for Zoe. And to make it worse, the child wasn't even biologically hers. When she found out the truth, her heart must have shattered. The thought made him punch himself in the chest. Caleb, you're a monster. Just then, the lawyer arrived. Mr. Jameson. Ms. Gallagher has entrusted me with all matters related to the divorce. Please sign these papers. Caleb stared at the divorce papers in the lawyer's hand, his head pounding as if it might split open. No, he couldn't accept this. He couldn't lose Claire. He had been so close to happiness, and he had destroyed it all. Now, all he wanted was to find his wife, apologize, and beg for her forgiveness. Claire's getting more creative, Zoe sneered, trying to downplay the situation, hiring an actor to play a divorce lawyer. Caleb. She's just trying to scare you. She's a housewife. Where could she even go? She'll come back once she's calmed down. If you go after her, you'll just encourage her to act out even more. Before Zoe could finish, Caleb slapped her across the face. Claire isn't the person you're making her out to be. This is between us. Stay out of it. Zoe, you've been lying to me for years. You made me hurt Claire over and over. You're the one who deserves to suffer. Guards. Caleb shouted. Lock her in the basement. She doesn't come out unless I say so. Despite Zoe's desperate pleas, she was dragged away. Caleb tore up the divorce papers and used every connection he had to track down my flight information. I had landed abroad and checked into a recovery center. After the procedure, my body was still weak, And I needed time to heal before I could start looking for work. The nurses at the center were incredibly kind. And under their care, I began to recover. One sunny morning, I decided to take a walk outside. My lawyer called just as I was about to head back in. Ms. Gallagher. Mr. Jameson is still refusing to sign the divorce papers, but we'll keep pushing. Thanks, I said. Hanging up and turning to go back inside. That's when I saw him. Caleb stood there, looking haggard. His stubble was unkempt. Dark circles hung under his eyes, and his once perfectly tailored suit was wrinkled and disheveled. It was clear he hadn't been taking care of himself since I left. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with a mix of relief and desperation. Claire, I finally found you. In the next moment, he fell to his knees, his face twisted with regret. Claire. I was wrong. I shouldn't have hidden the truth about the baby. I shouldn't have believed Zoe's lies. I've been such a fool. And I've hurt you for so long. I'm so sorry. Claire, please, forgive me. His eyes were red, his voice trembling with desperation. I can't lose you. Every night, I close my eyes and see your face. But when I wake up, you're not there. Every day without you is torture. Please, Claire, don't leave me. Don't make me sign those papers. But it was too late. Caleb, do you really think an apology can erase all the pain you've caused me? Do you think saying sorry makes up for all the lies? You said you'd do anything for Zoe. Well, now I'm giving you what you wanted. Why aren't you happy? No, Claire, it's not like that, he interrupted, his voice breaking. I thought Zoe saved me. All these years, I was just trying to repay her. But the truth is, I've always loved you. You're my wife. And you're the only one I want. Please, Claire, come home. Give me another chance. I looked at him coldly. It's too late, Caleb. I don't love you anymore. Sign the divorce papers. And don't come looking for me again, Caleb. Don't make me hate you. I pulled away from his grip on my sleeve and walked back into the recovery center. The facility was secure, no strangers allowed without an appointment. For the next few days, Caleb could only stand outside the gates, watching from a distance. That I kept the curtains drawn, blocking Caleb from seeing me. After a week, I thought he had finally left. I decided to step out for some fresh air, only to find him at the front desk, checking in, to stay close to me. Caleb had checked into the same recovery center. A wave of frustration washed over me, and I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Claire, I know you're not ready to forgive me. I just want to be near you, to make sure you're okay. I won't bother you. I promise. Just let me stay, please. I shook my head. Caleb, seeing you only makes things harder for me. Don't waste your time. No matter what you do, I'm not coming back. It's over. Before he could respond, his phone rang urgently. Mr. Jameson, it's Ms. Lewis. She's refusing to eat. She says she'll starve herself unless you come back. Let her do what she wants. Don't bother me with her problems. Caleb replied coldly, his tone completely different from the pleading one he'd used with me. Caleb, please come back. My heart, it's failing. Without a transplant, I'll die. Zoe's voice crackled through the phone. Zoe, your fate is your own. This is your punishment, Caleb said before hanging up. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze on me, filled with sorrow. When news of Zoe's death reached us, Caleb was outside my room, waiting for the nurse to bring my meal so he could catch a glimpse of me. He showed no emotion, as if Zoe had been a stranger for days. He kept his distance, but I could feel his eyes on me. He still hadn't signed the divorce papers. Finally, one afternoon, I opened the door and let him in, his face lit up with hope. Claire, I knew you'd forgive me. I promise. I'll make it up to you. I'll never hurt you again. I pulled my hand away, my voice calm but firm. Caleb, you've misunderstood. I'm here to talk about the divorce. The light in his eyes dimmed. Since you refuse to sign the papers, I'll file for divorce in court. My lawyer is handling it. Caleb, don't waste your energy. There's no future for us. I don't want to see you again. Please, let's end this with some dignity. If you keep harassing me, I'll call the police and have you deported. With that, I left him standing there, Stunned, soon after, my lawyer informed me that Caleb had signed the divorce papers and agreed to transfer all marital assets to me. After the divorce, Caleb stopped following me. He returned to our home country, where he drowned his sorrows in alcohol. He was hospitalized multiple times for alcohol poisoning that I donated his share of the assets to charity. Severing all ties with him, Ava kept me updated on the gossip from back home. Claire, you won't believe it. After that witch Zoe died, Caleb didn't even give her a proper burial. He had her body wrapped in a mat and dumped on a hillside. Who knows if the wolves have gotten to her by now. And Caleb, he's a mess. He's always drunk. Passed out on the streets. His company went bankrupt. He's basically a homeless man now. Those two got what they deserved. Karma's a bitch. My Claire is finally free. You've been through so much. But now you can start fresh. You'll find someone who truly loves you and have a baby of your own. I smiled at Ava's message and set my phone down, lost in thought. My body could no longer carry a child. But I had already experienced the joy of pregnancy, the careful anticipation, the wonder of every little kick. It had taught me patience and tenderness. Still, I couldn't help but grieve for the child I had lost. Yet, perhaps it was for the best. If the baby had been born, its life would have been filled with pain. Maybe it was kinder this way that I asked Ava to hold a memorial service for the child in our home country. I hoped that in its next life, it would know the love of both parents. Free from lies and betrayal after my body had fully recovered, I found a job abroad. Before my pregnancy, I had been deeply involved in the Jameson family's business, rising to a position just below Caleb's. But for the sake of our family, I had willingly stepped back to become a full-time homemaker. However, I was never a caged bird. No matter where I went, I had the ability to stand on my own 2 feet with my first paycheck. I rented a small apartment overseas, and my life gradually stabilized. In my free time, I volunteered at a local orphanage. I taught the children, who had no parents, how to paint and make crafts. Over time, the children started calling me Mommy, and would hand me handmade cards on Mother's Day. Their crooked drawings and heartfelt messages depicted the love and care they had always longed for. The orphanage director once held my hand and thanked me warmly. Since you've been here, the children have become so much brighter. Their smiles are more frequent now. I'm sure if you had your own child, you'd be a wonderful mother. I didn't tell her about my inability to have children. Instead, I just smiled and watched the children running under the sunlight. In this life, having them is more than enough for me. One day, a little girl came running toward me, holding a wildflower she had picked from the roadside. Mommy, this flower is for you. You're as beautiful as it is. I knelt down and kissed her cheek gently. Thank you, my sweetheart. Mommy loves it. She giggled and ran off to join the other children. On Children's Day, I prepared cards and gifts for each child. They gathered under the shade of a tree, listening intently as I told them a fairy tale. When I finished, a little boy spoke up in his clear, innocent voice. Mommy, you're the best mommy I've ever met. But why don't you have your own baby? I smiled and gently patted his head. Because Mommy has all of you. As long as you're happy and grow up healthy, that's all Mommy needs. The children beamed, their laughter filling the air. In that moment, I realized that my life had found a new purpose. I may not have been able to have my own child, but I had found a family in these little ones. Their love and joy were all I needed to feel complete.